Welcome in to Red Corner, Blue Corner right here on Stadium. A little Reaction Monday here for you. That is Jake Butt, the Michigan Wolverine, feeling great after a victory this weekend in Happy Valley.
And this is Joshua Perry, my buddy, a former national champion, a former captain, the voice of reason on this show. Excited to do another one with you, brother.
It's going to be a good one. We got a lot to get into here. We want to welcome you into the show as well. We are built off of interactivity, so we want you to get involved. Scan that QR code on the screen. You can submit some content, or you can go to watchstadium.com/submit to do so as well. Also, give us a follow on Instagram. Red_Corner_Blue Corner is where you can find us. Now, it was an interesting weekend. And as much as we had some action on the field, I do believe that the weekend belonged to Jim Harbaugh. On Friday, the Big Ten passed down its punishment, banning Harbaugh from the sidelines for the final 3 games of the regular season. Michigan filed a temporary restraining order, but the case will not be heard until Friday. In the meantime, the Wolverines took care of business without their head coach, beating Penn State in Happy Valley. Sharon Moore getting his victory there. So, a lot of things to unpack with this, Jake, but as the voice of Michigan on this show, I'll just let you have the floor.
Yeah, so, I think what we were curious about is how's the team going to react? And I don't expect a lot of people to maybe understand this if you're not in that locker room, but what I saw is this potentially could be a good thing for Michigan. It's never good to not have one of the best coaches of all time in Jim Harbaugh at any level on your sideline. But the response of Michigan says it's us versus the world. It's Michigan versus everybody. That's become a saying. A lot of coaches say it. They executed it this past weekend. People outside the program clearly, there's a clear divide. This is a polarizing topic. It is Michigan versus everybody. I think some people were excited about the 3-game suspension, but I think I saw some emotions that say it wasn't enough. I think a lot of people wanted to see Michigan go down this weekend. Those guys banded together. Sharon Moore's comment after the game where there was some emotion, I think is kind of just, that's a little data point to extract on something bigger. Because 10 years ago today was my freshman year at Michigan. We went 7-6 that year. We were booed by our own fans on multiple occasions. That was in 2013. In 2014, our own fans at our own stadium chanted, "Fire Brady Hoke, fire Dave Brandon." Our own fans at our home game were chanting, "Fire the coach, fire the AD." So we bring in Coach Harbaugh. Trouble with the snap. Didn't get it done in 2015. 2016, you guys kicked our butt. Double overtime. We lost. We fell short. 2017, 2018, 2020, the program's at its lowest point. Their own fans wanted change. They wanted to fire and move on from Jim Harbaugh. And yet they finally get here. Michigan believes, I say that to say this, Michigan, those guys clearly believe that this is a national title team. They believe they can do it. It's been a long road to get there, an absolute emotional roller coaster. They find out Jim's not going to coach. It took them up till about 2 hours pregame when that was confirmed. What happened in that postgame presser was Sharon Moore just let all that emotion out. His love for his players, his love for his staff, his love for Coach Harbaugh. It exemplifies what we just said. It is Michigan versus everybody.
I want to plug the poll here real quick, and we'll get back to this conversation. Who's the better team right now, Ohio State or Michigan? It's pretty split right now. Would love to hear what people have to say about that. I'm here for some of what you said. Jim Harbaugh also had his Monday presser today. He said that Michigan's America's team. So is it Michigan versus everybody, or are you America's team? Because you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth right now. So I'd really like to know that. That's number one. Number two, I would like to take this conversation to a place where we stop calling this a suspension of Jim Harbaugh, because that's not what it actually is. This is effectively a game day ban. He can coach throughout the week. He can create the game plan, and then he just cannot be in the stadium. By the way, he's not a head coach who calls plays on either side of the football. Sharon Moore and Jesse Minter do that. Both of them have done a hell of a job with that. So I understand it's important to have your head coach out there, and it's a big deal for the players not to have him. And they can try to say like they were blindsided, even though we all kind of knew that the punishment was coming. There was likely to be some suspension, and I'm sure that they prepared for that in the back room, because coaches don't do anything without preparing for every doomsday scenario, especially ones that you could see coming. It's wild. And then my final thing, and Sharon Moore is a coach I respect the hell out of. I know this guy. I have talked to him on multiple occasions. I think the world of him. I am glad he did what he did for the emotion of his team and for what it does in the locker room, for galvanizing that group and really kind of being the guy for them. And I can understand why he was so expressive for a number of reasons I'm not going to get into right here. But the whole, we did it for you, Jim. This man ain't in a hospital bed anywhere. This man is not incapacitated. He's not hurt. He is serving a one-day-a-week punishment for something that went on in his program that he did not have control over. And that's perfectly okay. And that's all it has to be. And we don't have to make it any more than that. That is reality, people.
So here's the thing. We just painted it. You are representing one side. I'm trying to represent the other side of the logic behind this. When adversity strikes, there's this adversity introduces a man to himself. When adversity strikes, you get to learn about the character and the cohesion
even when
and
you
the love
create
of the
the
team.
adversity yourself?
Adversity just as a principle. Created it or not, yes, they put themselves in this position. They did create it.
But then do you get to leverage that to act like you're under siege when that might not actually be the case?
Fair questions, but you get to do whatever you want. You get to do whatever you want. You know, when Bryce Young wins the Heisman, he says, "I've been an underdog my whole life," and he says, yeah, you were the #1 recruit in the high school, 5-star, went to Bama. Kirby Smart talking about no one gives us credit. Like, yeah, you get to do whatever you want.
Right, and I called them all foolish for doing that too. We talked about what Kirby did earlier this year, where I said that was crazy.
Perfect. It can be foolish to everybody. No, everyone outside can laugh at it or not understand it or whatever. But the point is what we're judged on in this industry is wins and losses.
Sure.
And if the team collectively agrees that it's us against the world, this is going to propel us to higher heights, we can all say whatever we want about it, but how it's affecting their on-field performance. It's bringing them closer together.
No, I'm here for that, right? And I think you could have gone through that without the whole, Jim Harbaugh is some pariah or whatever the case is. I just don't think is a real narrative. But I wanted to get to some of your questions. We said that we would involve you in this show. Want to get there. Ken Kenyon asks, do you think this will distract Michigan from what they have to do the next couple of weeks? Jake, I'll open that up to you because you're close to that program.
It will be a distraction at some level. It can't not be a distraction. And I was talking to some of the Michigan players just about the whole lead up. And Cornelius Johnson, the veteran receiver, brought up a great point. Depending how distracting it is directly correlated to the maturity of your team. If you turn off social media, if you have the discipline to turn it off and put your phone down, obviously it's going to be less of a distraction. So people are going to be aware of this. JP, you mentioned a great point. Jim Harbaugh is going to be there Sunday through Friday. He just won't be there on game day. That's a huge advantage in terms of handling distractions. But the maturity of this team, from a number of reasons, there was a 3-game suspension to start the year. Yeah. So they're kind of experienced in
almost
this.
Like they're prepared for it.
And really, you could say they are, right? The maturity of this team tells me that though it will be some distraction, they're built to handle this well.
Yeah, I've got a similar feeling about this Michigan football team, too. I think that these guys have been told that they were no good for so long, and many of them were on the roster when people were saying those things about them, that they take everything as an opportunity to grow and get better and to embrace themselves and kind of knock out the outside noise. Now, we do have another question here from Sam Brief. This one's for you again, Jake. What's Michigan missing the most with no Harbaugh on the sidelines? I think that's a wonderful question.
That's a great question. I think it cannot be denied who Jim Harbaugh is as a football coach. Look at his long-time winning record. He's turned around every program and had success everywhere he's been. Very few. I mean, I can count on one hand coaches are able to succeed at the NFL and the college level. So he's just a coach as a principal. What they're missing is that. They're missing that presence. You mentioned not every coach has X's and O's.
Right.
So then what is the value of a coach? Well, it's a number of different things. It's presence, it's leadership, it's game management, it's clock management, it's decision making within the game, it's potential suggesting substitutions. A coach can be the voice of reason above all the on-field action. So what they're missing is all that part for Jim Harbaugh. And part of it is, even though Sharon and Jesse call the plays, that when Sharon had to be reminded to put his headset on this past game. Hey, man, you're still the head coach. He's going to do what he does, which is talk to the O-line, to the offense, and say, hey, coach, man, we have to help. We need to hear what you're suggesting when we're on defense, right? So You're missing that piece of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And once again, I think they're as prepared for anybody for this because they went through this exact same situation for the first 3 games of the season this year. So certainly they probably have a plan in place. Now, I wanted to flip it over to the Penn State side real quick because they fired offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich. That came yesterday. But the question is, and we'll talk about Yurcich here, but how much blame should James Franklin be taking right now?
I feel like I want you to lead this because you've been on the offensive performance. You've been for a while, so I'd love to just hear your opinion to start.
Yeah, I think Mike Yurcich, it was the right call to get rid of him, and I've not had very glowing things to say about him as a coordinator. And it's not that I don't like the guy, it's just the fact that I look at his offense and I ask what concepts are built in a way that they layer upon one another to the point that they scare a defense. And as a guy who played defense, I do not look at that offense that way. It's not a run scheme, and then a pass off the run, and then another run, and like just all the things that you would do, right? Like he does none of that.
There's no depth.
The formations don't make sense, and the shifts don't make sense. It's not. Most teams will shift their motion to build different looks off of looks you've already seen. He'll throw something out there that you've never seen before, and it's like I don't have to prepare for this because there's nothing that scares me off of what you did before with this. All that to say, the 2-point conversion call, not the actual, let's go for 2 at the end, but the actual play call. You have to get 3 yards, and you go to a gimmick because that's who he is, and he doesn't have faith in his players. If they can get 3 yards, it's the reason why he's got to go. But I also look at James Franklin and say, brother, you haven't had on an offensive coordinator in a little while. You haven't done that in a little while. This is partially on you too, buddy.
Real quick before we head to a break, for all those reasons, now James Franklin's 4-16 all-time versus Ohio State and Michigan. What does Penn State's future look like in the Big Ten, JP?
That's a great question, right? I think that you can make an argument that they might be in the same spot next year. And the only reason I say that is with the newcomers. Caleb Williams not going to be there, and Bo Nix is probably not going to be there. Michael Penix Jr. is not going to be there. And so they probably still have an opportunity to be, a top 3 team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The issue that I see is that their ceiling is that 3 spot. I don't think they're breaking through that, and Penn State fans want to break through that.
They won't break through it until they do break through it, right? Sounds simple, right? Well, there's drama in the East, JP. There's drama in the West. The Western drama just looks a little bit different, so we will turn our attention to the West coming up after the break, where the Hawkeyes now just got one step closer to a trip to Indianapolis. We're going to break down everything that happened on the other side of this break.
Well, I think Jake and I have started to get a little bit testier. 12 days until the game.
Natural.
Ohio State in Ann Arbor taking on the Michigan Wolverines. How you feel?
Here's one stat for you. So Michigan plays Penn State last weekend. It did 6 million viewers, the fifth most game of the season and the most watched game in the afternoon or noon slot. So we can only imagine the numbers on this game in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm thinking like 20 million, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, the winner of that game will meet the West Division winner in Indianapolis for the Big Ten title game. And right now, Iowa is in control of that race. The Hawkeyes have clinched at least a share of the West Division crown with a shutout of Rutgers over the weekend. Only Illinois and Minnesota can spoil Iowa's trip to Indianapolis. When you look at everything that has gone on in the West, and that is a division that has been really difficult for us to figure out. One of the questions is the coach of the year coming out of the West, and if so, who is it?
Impossible to figure out. Maybe not even just, it's impossible. Okay, let me make this case for you. There's a few cases, but after watching this past weekend.
Here you go.
I'm asking myself, could it be Kirk? Could it be Kirk? I mean, they're a punt return call that was right on the fence away from being 9-1 right now. And I get it about the offense. I just think that's a separate conversation. That's an offseason conversation. They've already addressed it, right? But I think when we were talking about the value of a head coach earlier, I say, hey, part of your head coach is having conviction and saying, I know what the best formula is to give my team a chance to win. I don't care about the public perception. That's a head coach. That's Kirk Ferentz. They lose their quarterback and their top 2 playmakers on offense. I don't think that makes them the Kansas City Chiefs if they had those guys back, but it's certainly hard to overcome. And Kirk has stood in the face of the fire all year long, and what he has done is asked himself, how can my team win this week? And never wavers from that formula.
Deacon Hill this weekend was a better version of Cade McNamara at any point during his starts for Iowa this year. Okay, so let's not use the injury excuse. I won a national title on a team that was real banged up. Okay, we were on our 3rd quarterback that year, so I'm really not trying to hear that. And again, it feels like Iowa hate when I do this, but I cannot excuse what we have seen from they didn't have to be at this point at all this year where we're talking about their offense the way that it is. And the fact that they've been able to keep it together, I think speaks to a lot of people in that building. I think it speaks to mature players, and I think it speaks to a culture that was already built and set there, and that is on Kirk. But no, I'm not ready to reward that. I look at David Braun and what he's done at Northwestern. We've talked about this a number of times. Did you think that they were going to do what they did to Wisconsin?
Did I think they were going to have one win at all this year?
Brother, I mean, like, the most notable coach in their program's history, and Pat Fitzgerald, only won a singular game last year. They had not been good the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting here with a team that's staring a bowl game down right now. No, like, he is the coach of the year. That's the only right answer.
Most wins in year 1 by a Northwestern coach of all time.
He's the coach of the year.
With everything that happened in the offseason, look, I'm shocked that he hasn't inked a deal right now. I'm shocked it's not in Sharpie. He's the head coach going forward.
So
I'll make the case for Kirk, but I think you make a really great case for Coach Braun as well.
So I was talking to some people about that over the weekend, and I think that he should be the front runner for that job. And if they decided to give it to him right now, it would make no difference to me. He deserves it. But there is a feeling that they want to really pursue a name. Like they want to at least kick the tires on some of the names that are out there. And I just feel like they got a guy who, I don't know if you'll be able to find another one like him.
So some of these teams that have a head coaching vacancy, maybe they go after. If I'm his agent, I'm getting teams on the phone and trying to get leverage. He's proved himself. Coaching is about exceeding expectations.
Yeah.
That's why Ryan Day hasn't won. Like Ohio State, Michigan, those coaches don't always win Coach of the Year because the expectations are already so high.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's when you start to grade the expectations, and certainly what we thought they were going to be, it's night and day. Give the man the damn trophy right now. All right, we're going to take one final break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, but on the other side, you know what time it is. It's time for that conference clash. AJ McCarron and T-Bob are waiting in the wings, and hey, could they be welcoming Michigan fans to the SEC soon? Check that out on the other side. Time for a little conference clash over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner, and we got our guy T-Bob A-Bear sitting here waiting to chit-chat. How was the weekend, T-Bob? How you feeling?
I mean, I feel pretty spectacular. I don't want to get into Washington failing to cover. That's fine, so we don't even have to. It was a good Saturday. A great day of college football. Bunch of big action in all the windows. And then Saturday night, I watched Jaden Daniels put on maybe the most spectacular single-game individual performance that I've ever seen in my entire life. So yeah. I'm feeling good today.
Yeah, Daniels, I got to point out every time we have this conversation, 350 plus through the air, 200 on the ground. The guy is ridiculous. He should be on everybody's Heisman ballots regardless of what you think about the team performance. I feel the same way about Marvin Harrison Jr. in terms of how ridiculous he has been as well. Those are two guys we need to talk about more. It's neither here nor there, not time for that. I do want to ask you about this, though, because on the message boards and on social media and all over the internet, Michigan fans are mad because their coach got a game day ban, and so they won't be able to see him on Saturdays. And so they decided that, well, maybe it's time to take Michigan to the SEC. They want to leave the Big Ten and go to the SEC. A little secede from the Big Ten action, if you will, here. So how do you think that would work out if they actually left?
Yeah, a little reverse civil war, right? Leaving the North, coming down South. No, look, man, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Obviously, to Michigan, it just means more. And what has the SEC slogan been for years now? It just means more. So, yeah, like Desmond Howard had the right of it when he said the other day that, like, look, in the SEC, this would never happen. Like the likes of Kentucky and Vanderbilt would not be able to pressure Greg Sankey into going after Nick Saban. Like, I am shocked by how quickly Tony Petitti capitulated and gave into the pressure and didn't, because it's so easy to stretch this out. Would it have been a bit minor pre hard hit? Yeah, whatever. We say, well, it's a legal process and the investigation's ongoing. No, Petitti was like, all right, let's do it. You're suspended, Harbaugh. I think there's going to be some ripple effects here, some fallout. I'm not exactly sure what, but yeah, Michigan, come on down, bro.
Let me jump in.
Jake, come on, dude. Come on, Jake. Get out of there. Leave Josh. Come with me. We can sit right next to each other.
I'm going to jump in real quick. It's not a legal process, and Big Ten could have stood behind that. But, like, enforcing your rules has nothing to do with law. If they want to make it that, it's perfectly fine. They can take it to courts and see what the laws have to say. But let's not do that. The other thing that Desmond said that bothered me is he's talking about Kentucky and Vanderbilt. I don't necessarily think that is a good analogy, because they're not doing this because of Indiana and because of Northwestern necessarily. Like, there were other, like, schools that were affected by this, like the big brands. I'm sure if they found out that Kirby was out there sneaking and geeking on Alabama, Sankey might have to feel like he needed to do something, because I'm not exactly sure Alabama fans were going to sit back and be like, oh, this is perfectly fine.
See, I see what you're saying, though, T-Bob, because this was effectively the political aspect of this. Petitti had the narrative outside forced his hand. He had to do action. Yeah. And what you're saying is the SEC says what's best for you is the best for all of us. I say this with the NFL owners, when we negotiated our new CBA. Those guys aren't best friends. In fact, a lot of them don't like each other, but they do know when they work together, they're more powerful. What Petitti could have done, and I think this is the biggest frustration for Michigan fans, is said, we want to follow the NCAA, your lead. Hey, we're gonna watch what you guys do and sit back and be patient.
No, and look, I don't have all the facts in terms of all the evidence they have, how damning it is or isn't, who was doing whether or not. But I think there's approximately 100 different ways you could have delayed this, right? Like I know the pressure and everything else, but you absolutely could have slow played this. You could have held it off. Now you didn't. Still a huge win for Michigan. And it's tough, man. When a head coach isn't there, like, I know they're not calling plays and stuff, but it doesn't mean nothing, right? I mean, I think we talked about it on the show, but, like, if you look at military history throughout all time, like, people get boon out of seeing their general there, their man on the field of battle with them. And so credit Michigan for not having Harbaugh this weekend and overcoming.
Let me just ask one more question before it flips over here. But if the Big Ten had records of tickets being scanned in and surveillance video of Connor Stallion's minions out there from this season, does that affect their ability to make a decision about punishment in this season?
I think you play politics here. You protect your biggest brands, and you just say we'll deal with it in the offseason, essentially.
I feel like it's
Then
hard to deal with that in the offseason when
investigation.
you have what went on this season. I think that bothers a lot of people that aren't Michigan. But I understand where you're coming from, too, because you feel like you're cutting the legs from one of your biggest brands.
Look, Joshua, you don't have to be upset that Rivals Down South isn't inviting Ohio State to the SEC party along with Michigan, okay? Look, if you really want, I suppose we could extend the Buckeyes an invite as well, okay?
I like
You're
football
more than
in the
welcome
North
to come
better.
to it.
We play in football weather. You know, dudes don't come.
Yeah,
you know, we don't feel like we need to bundle up with electric blankets out there when it's like 45 degrees outside. We're good up
that's
here.
freezing. Relax. 45 is way too cold. Entirely too cold to play football. Secondly, I like Big Ten football as well. It was really exciting watching Michigan not attempt a forward pass the entire second half. AJ, that had to just make your day on Saturday. All right. Here we go though. Let's get to it. It's Rivals Down South time. We're on the clock now. And, well, your conference was busy with Harbaugh and whatnot. The SEC, we spill blood, okay? Sometimes at very exorbitant prices. Both coaches from Saturday's A&M Mississippi State matchup out afterwards. A&M going so far as to present a $164 million check to the school at halftime, and then announce on Sunday they would be paying $76 million to fire Jimbo Fisher. Jake, we'll start with you. Are you surprised that A&M finally pulled the trigger here?
Maybe. I mean, you could say this that they could have waited another year, but really, like, when you look at it, there was clearly what Texas A&M has is effectively infinite resources, right?
Yes.
I mean, for this to be, and JP and I were talking about this, there's no offset clause. So Jimbo gets that money regardless, even if he goes and gets another $10 million a year job. That's unheard of. But I think what A&M is doing right here is saying to the athletic department, like, hey, we have the funds. Let's move on from this. They've recruited well. There's talent on the roster. They not only have enough funds to just pay this off, but they feel they have enough funds to go get the next big coach that can capitalize on the timing of this.
It's not just the fact that there's no offset language where if he got another job, it would reduce what they pay him. It's the fact that there's no mitigation that says you have to search for another job. Like, you can't just take a vacation. You can't retire. You can't disappear. There's nothing that says that. This is one of the worst contracts I have ever seen. There's no reason a buyout ever needs to be that high, and I totally get what they're trying to do. Hey, we're all behind you. We support you, and if we got to make a move, we're going to give you the cash. There's another way to do that, and the idea that you also wouldn't say, hey, let's hedge a little bit here, and if we do have to pay you a buyout, we need you to go seek gainful employment that is similar to what you have right now, and if you get the money, we're going to reduce what we give you. You'll get the full 76. You're just not going to get it all from us.
Here's what I'm curious to ask you guys, though, because you know the brand and the perception of A&M down in the SEC better than anyone. But how desirable of a job is this? I think it's very desirable just because you're communicating. If you guys have a number and we think you're the guy, we'll pay the price. But what's the perception of this job down south?
Well, I mean, for me personally, listen, I think from a perception standpoint, if you're a coach looking for a huge payout or payday, yes, this job is very desirable. I also think A&M fans think a lot more of themselves than what they are as a university when it comes to a football program. I think for them to capitalize was a couple years ago when they gave Jimbo the extension in 21 after he beat Alabama. That was when they should have capitalized on the recruiting process and winning games during that time. Because now all of a sudden you're allowing Texas and OU into the SEC. Guess what? You could argue that A&M is the worst job out of any of those scenarios right there. And so I don't care how many resources or how much oil money you have. Like, you're not going to come in to A&M and out-recruit Texas in the state of Texas, and you're probably not going to out-recruit Oklahoma in the state of Texas as well. So I don't know who they think they're going to be able to go get. Maybe Dan Lanning, maybe another big-name guy, the coach at Duke. But I don't know why you would leave a place like Oregon to go take the job at A&M. It doesn't make sense to me. I thought this firing was a little odd just in the timing after having such a big blowout win. But, I mean, their past couple games, they've lost, close games. They lost by 7 to Tennessee, so it's a question mark to me.
So I tried to get to the breaking point. I talked to Billy Lucci, who, Chaz Michaels is figure skating. Billy Lucci is Texas A&M. And it seems to be more of like a death by 1,000 cuts, right? And if you wanted to point to a final straw, I think it is that loss to Ole Miss. It's 3 years in a row. You had Lane before the game talking about how, hey, we're in the top 10 and we're playing a team that should be in the top 10 every year. And they're just fighting for bowl eligibility. And so he's taking these digs, then you go lose once again. Third year in a row, like Kevin, A&M fans were done. The Border Regions met on Thursday. That was that. And yeah, I mean, look, everything saying is y'all are saying is correct. A&M feels like a kid with too much money who thinks that he can buy success, but doesn't necessarily want to do the hard work to get there. And the thing is, I don't know that I've ever seen a hire with so much pressure on it, and they're going to have to take a shot on someone.
Yep.
There are no 100% candidates ever, especially not in this field. And if you're Dan Lanning, why the hell would I go to A&M? If you're Kayla DeBoer, why the hell would I go to A&M? So, they're going to – maybe if they want to take a shot on Elko, that can make sense. They're going to have to give somebody an opportunity and hope that the guy that they bet on can just show up and get it done. And something that nobody's ever been able to do at A&M since Bear Bryant left them in the lurch for Alabama back in the 50s. Joshua, I see you want to say something. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up really well. I think the other part, too, of why people were frustrated with this, and AJ, you were talking about how they have to recruit. And I think NIL changed the game for them because of how highly capitalized they are. They had one of the most talented rosters because of one of their recruiting classes. And then the whole thing fell apart between kids transferring out and the fact that they couldn't develop guys. It seemed like they recruited every wrong 5-star in that class. And I think that's a big part of it, too. Is even when you have the recruiting class, you use the NIL, you still screwed it up. And that's where people are like, we got to be done with this guy.
A name to watch out. Go ahead. A name to watch out for. I think Lane Kiffin puts his name in the hat.
So, and again, because that talent Joshua was talking about, a lot of it is still there. So that is a point in A&M's favor, I think, to attract some of these big fish. They, in theory, but this is always a problem with A&M, in theory, they should be ready to win now. Mm-hmm. All right, Joshua. All right, Jake. Thank you all so much. Y'all have a great day. Red corner, blue corner. Love you, boys. Jake, again, come on. Come down. This weekend, we got to see some absolutely stellar performances. I mean, you're seeing it here right now. Jaden Daniels, 606 total yards, 5 touchdowns, doing something nobody's ever done in the FBS. Jalen Milroe continues to get better and better, career high 6 touchdowns. And then Cody Schrader out of Mizzou doing something that's never been done in the SEC, 200 yards on the ground, 100 through the air, and a massive win for the Missouri Tigers. Let's start with Jaden Daniels. AJ, you play this position. After the game, Brian Kelly says, quote, if Daniels the Heisman tonight, he's got to be the leading candidate, unless the Heisman's just about popularity. If you want to be the most popular, then fine, but he's the best player in college football. He did something tonight that no one has ever done, and if that doesn't make you the leading candidate, maybe the Heisman really isn't for the best player. Agree or disagree, AJ McCarron?
I've felt that about the Heisman for a while now. I think the Heisman has gotten away from, always going to the best player. I think it's a lot of hype behind it, social media hype. So, yeah, listen, he's playing at a high level right now. The argument against him is going to be, hey, they've lost twice. If for whatever reason they were to slip up and lose again, maybe to A&M at the end of the year or whatever, then it becomes a really big question mark. But as of right now, yeah, it's I think Jaden's playing the best in the country.
Look, I think another loss absolutely damns him. But right now, Jaden Daniels leads the NCAA in total yards, yards per play, QBR, passing touchdowns, and rush yards by a quarterback. He has more yards per game alone than 80 teams have. He has more total touchdowns this year than 81 teams have. And here's the key. He's done it against a better schedule than any of these other Heisman quarterback candidates, right? In the 3 losses, all the top 10 teams on the road, he played very well in all those games, and he has a very nice win on the road at Mizzou, right? So, like, Bo Nix, these other guys have not had to face that yet. I think the fear for Daniels supporters, or as if a championship weekend, he'll be sitting at home. Bo Nix will likely be playing Washington. We'll see how it all plays out. But Daniels is not the only one setting records right now, AJ. I mean, Jalen Milroe, the first Alabama quarterback in history. Where were you at, dog? 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns in the same game. He now has 10 touchdowns at the last 2. I mean, give us your latest take on just the continued development of Jalen Milroe.
Well, yeah, like I've said the past couple of weeks, I think Tommy Rees has found the right formula for him and for that offense to where they're using him a lot in the running game. I mean, the week before against LSU, he had 4 rushing touchdowns, right? In the past 2 weeks against LSU, they threw the ball 23 times. This past week against Kentucky, they threw it 22 times. And he basically had the same stats in both games, except, listen, Kentucky's ever since Coach Stoops has come out with that comment after they played Georgia about recruiting and needed more money to pay the players and stuff like that, Kentucky's not been the same. So I don't overhype as a quarterback. Your mindset is, like I told you last week, it's never as good as you think. It's never as bad as you think. Let's just even mindset. Because if you start listening to everybody else, everybody in media, us included, is going to build you up to tear you down. So as soon as you fail, that's just the nature of the business. So, but he's playing well. Tommy Rees is calling, a good game, and they're doing a good job mixing everything up.
What's the most rushing touchdowns you ever had in a game?
Maybe 2.
Oh, okay. Okay, boy. I see it. Look, you know what did become official this weekend? We are going to get the Georgia-Alabama heavyweight match in Atlanta, SEC championship. Once again, Kirby and Nick. And it does beg the question, is there a talent gap between Georgia and other SEC schools? We'll get to that and viewer questions next here on Rivals. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Rivals Down South here on Stadium. And remember, we want all of your questions, takes, both hot and cold here in Rivals Down South. And you can always submit them at watchstadium.com/submit. And one of our loyal viewers, Nolan Hawley, submitted this question last week.
Hey, Rivals Down South, guys. Quick question leading into the Georgia-Tennessee game. Do you think this is Georgia's hardest opponent yet? If so, do you think they have the chance to win? Or do you think that Tennessee's going to come in with the upset? Personally, I'm Rocky Top, but would love to hear your take. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Nolan. You the man, and I see you in chat right now. What's up, dog? I think going into Neyland's always tough. It's 100,000 strong. That place gets loud, it gets crazy. But I don't know how you answer anybody but Mizzou after what you've seen out of this Mizzou Tiger football team. There was nothing fluky about them going into Athens and giving the Georgia the game they just got. They just really dominated. Like, I'm shocked how Mizzou dominated Tennessee on the lines of scrimmage. Tennessee is a damn good offensive line, a damn good defensive line, and Mizzou made mincemeat of them. So, look, this is still a test for Georgia, but I feel like Kirby Smart and the boys are peaking right now. I feel like Georgia goes into Neyland and comes out with the dub.
Yeah, I'm with you, T-Bob. Listen, I think Georgia's biggest test during the season so far, especially, was Mizzou. And listen, I love Coach Heupel. I think he's an excellent coach, unbelievable offensive mind. But they just don't have the talent to compete with Georgia for 4 quarters. So I think Georgia wears them down and eventually puts a hurting on them in the end.
You can win at the margins right now a bit running the ball against Georgia. Tennessee doesn't have the quarterback, which in kind of an ironic way, AJ, I would feel really good as a Volunteer fan about the future of the program, because Heupel's, he's not quarterback reliant necessarily. Like, he's cobbled together a pretty damn good team here. Whereas when he hits on another guy like a Hendon Hooker, maybe it's Imaleva, somebody, then Tennessee should be fighting again for like the SC East potentially, and maybe even the SEC crown. Lane Kiffin is someone who maybe appears to be on the edge of that. I mean, Ole Miss, even with the loss Saturday, probably going to go 10-2 for the second time in 3 years. But after losing 52-17 this weekend in Athens, says, quote, "We've got to recruit at a higher level. I'm not blaming people. We've got to coach better. But, at some point, whatever those stats are, we've signed 1 5-star. Georgia signed 24. It does kind of show up at some point. I love this because he's correct, man. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. And that's the thing about Mark Stoops. It's not that Mark Stoops was incorrect either, but the problem with Mark Stoops is he's not beating the other teams. Like, if Mark Stoops takes care of everybody else and then loses to Georgia, those complaints are acceptable. Lane Kiffin's now got Ole Miss to a place where they are beating the other teams, but they're just so clearly, and everybody is, 24 5-stars to 1. I mean, how are you supposed to outcoach that talent gap?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. And listen, I think this speaks more volumes to why I mentioned earlier Lane Kiffin throwing his name into the Texas A&M hat coming up here soon, is because of that, right? He talked about the week before playing A&M and how many top recruits they have, and what that recruiting class, they should be in the top 10 in the country every year. I think it's a good spot for him to be able to recruit. He's a big name. A&M needs a big name coach kind of to build the hype a little bit more around it, right? Keep the big recruits that you have there for that next season. So I think this speaks more about him looking for the next job rather than speaking to Ole Miss alum and saying, hey, we need more money. That's just my personal opinion.
So I was kind of shocked a bit when I talked to Billy Lucci earlier, and I was kind of barking up the Lane Kiffin tree, and he seems to think that it's kind of a non-starter for A&M due to like things like how people feel about him, the fact that it's Ross Bjork there. To me, if you are not having those conversations with Lane Kiffin, then you should not be having the search, or you should not be leading the search. Like, Lane Kiffin absolutely is a viable candidate for Texas A&M. I'm still with you though, AJ. I know, and you kind of intimated this. I kind of feel like for Lane, he's going for it, and that all roads lead to T-Town. I don't know when or in hit, like that's what he wants, right? But if you go to A&M, you close that door, and so maybe it doesn't happen for that reason. But like I think he wants to end up one day coaching the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Oh, 1,000%. But guess what? All three big coaches, Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban, and Lane Kiffin, have in common. Their agent, Jimmy Sexton, right?
It's Sexton Jimmy Sexton, season, baby.
Jimmy Sexton wrote up that contract for Jimbo Fisher, and the guys from the blue and red corner talked about how awful that contract was. Guess what? The same agent is going to come right back in there talking about, hey, we need this in the contract. And he'll find a way to make it to where the language in the contract is easy for Lane to get out when that Alabama job comes open. Lane's going to do the same thing. He's going to put his name right into the hat for the Alabama job and want that more than anything else. But I think for right now, this only helps build, Lane's whole profile to eventually go, and really shoot for that Alabama job when Coach Saban retires.
Still to come here on Rivals Down South. Let's start to talk a little Alabama, Georgia. It's that time of year once again, and it's Message Board Monday. Keep it locked here on Stadium. I believe it was Matthew McConaughey, True Detective Season 1, one of the greatest pieces of media ever made. It's time is a flat circle. And my God, it certainly feels that way. We're on December 2nd. And who else will be playing in Atlanta but Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide and Kirby Smart and the UGA Bulldogs? And it probably my favorite weird stat in all of college football. Kirby Smart has more national championships than he does wins over Nick Saban. What do you think, AJ? How do you score this one here early on? Is Alabama hot enough right now to once again pull it off against Smart and the Bulldogs?
I don't know. Listen, I've said it all year, and I mean, you can vouch for me. I think Georgia's the best team in the country.
Sure.
Will I be rooting for Alabama and, cheering to the top of my lungs? Of course. Do I think they're a, complete team? Because I think to beat Georgia, it takes a complete team. I don't know if they are right now. And I think Georgia's playing so well in the biggest games all year. When we said, oh, Georgia could slip up right here, Georgia's just, steamrolled everybody. So I don't know. It's going to be tough, though.
Carson Beck's getting really good. Like Carson Beck is just started to take off. If he actually returns next year, like the rumors saying, I think you'd be looking at the first overall pick. All right, it's time for a brand new segment here, Message Board Monday. Our guy Dan has combed all the message boards, and Grad92 says he wants LSU to hire 2 defensive coordinators. It's never been done at LSU. I've seen it work out big time for Rice and Pitt this year. It's like having a pilot and co-pilot in your airplane in case the first guy can't fly. Look, I love a pilot and co-pilot as much as the next person. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, right? Han and Chewie are my freaking dogs. But unfortunately, it has been done at LSU, 2008, Mallory and Pivotal, and it was one of the worst defenses the school has ever had. And I don't know. I believe in somebody having the final say. There needs to be a big dog. I hate this idea. AJ, this one's for you. A Georgia fan, Putt for Doe, says Bama is Mizzou with much better talent. Never thought about it that way.
I don't even know what the hell that means. Tell me the last time Mizzou's won a national championship.
Yeah.
Listen, that guy needs to lay off the weed.
Shout out to the GOAT, Stephen A. Bulldog56 says, empathetic loser wants Jimbo, empathetic loser, great name, at Mississippi State, saying, quote, he has plenty of money, obviously a ton of head coaching experience, throw money at the coordinators, let's ride. No, Jimbo needs to go home. Jimbo, come back to West Virginia. AJ, thank you so much. You have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow on Rivals.